Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the NHCFAE Career Series Podcast, where we highlight trailblazers, leaders, and innovators right here in our community that are actively sharing their passions, paving the way for the next generation of aviation professionals, and creating the space right here, right now, for people like you and me. My name is Karen Perez, your National Vice President and host for today's session. Our special guest today is Miss Graciela Tiscareño-Sato, an incredible aviation leader, military veteran, a daughter of Mexican immigrants, a bilingual author of the Captain Mama series about women flying airplanes, just to name a few. In essence, a true advocate whose journey to this day continues to inspire future generations across the aviation and aerospace sector. So, Graciela, a very warm welcome to you from us, the National Hispanic Coalition for Aviation Excellence.
Mhm.
As a leader who has dedicated her career to empowering women and underrepresented communities in aviation,
Mhm.
can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Well, I feel like you just said everything. No, thank you for that introduction. No, and thank you for the daughter of Mexican immigrants, because that is how I introduce myself. I'm the daughter of Arturo and Tina Tiscareño from Mexico, and I was born in El Paso, daughter of 5 immigrants. Short introduction is I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants who found herself at UC Berkeley on a 4-year Air Force ROTC scholarship, which then led to a decade of military aviation service. That was not my plan, but that's how it rolled out. We could talk about the how. And then I love that global adventure so much that I decided to write a children's book series so that, yeah, we can see that Latinas are serving, Latinas are flying, and mothers are serving and flying. So, yeah, that's it. That's the quick intro.
100%. And I love that.
Mm.
Now, in your military career,
Mhm.
you received specialized training on how to operate the KC 135R, a
Mhm.
refueling tanker. Oh my God, which you described as a flying gas station. Can you
Yes.
tell us a bit about your role in these operations and what I imagine is pure adrenaline in being able to rendezvous with other airplanes midair just to refuel them?
See, you use the word rendezvous. That's it. That's key right there. So, yeah, so it's a flying gas station, and it was absolutely, it's one of the most strategic, most fundamental and foundational missions in the US Air Force, because as we like to say, nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. That's like what the community says, because you can't even get the fighters across the ocean without us. Everybody needs us. So, it was a lot of combat air patrol. A specific role, let me show you a picture. I love showing a picture. This is from the second book, but this is it for people who have not seen the flying gas station. It is literally we connect through the boom to the receptacle of another airplane and then we simply refuel. So we make it look easy, but it is very dangerous. And every once in a while, things happen that remind us that it's dangerous. But my role, I was the math girl. And that's why I'm so visible in schools now is to talk about why all this math? What's so important about math and science? Well, my role was literally to do the computations so that we could get to exactly this latitude and this longitude anywhere in the world exactly at this time so that we could be 3 miles in front of whoever we're going to join up with, rendezvous with, to give them gas. So it was very precise mathematics. So I was the aircraft navigator on the tanker. So when missions changed, if we're in a tactical area over Saudi Arabia, and a MiG is coming to get us, or somebody else we have to relocate. I was the one that was always doing the dynamic in-flight planning right now, and then getting clearances with AWACS and all that. So really, it was like the mathematically inclined mission commander. What I say happened. How fast, how many bank angle, what time, so that we could be where we're supposed to be to do our mission. So I loved it. It was extremely, mathematically challenging, and it was really fun.
I can imagine. I will say it's badass. And I think it's pretty
Totally.
similar to the things that need to be accounted for, say, a rocket launch, where we have to make sure that it's being done in a
Yeah.
specific part of Earth's orbit
Yep. Yep.
and in a particular trajectory so that it can
Yes.
meet, say, the International Space Station in a specific point of their orbit. So
It's
super badass.
literally mathematics in action. I always say airplanes are physics in motion, like literally airplanes are physics in motion. So that's a great example that you just offered.
Very cool. Badass. Badass.
And fun
So
too.
you've spoken about how Air Force Captain Dolly DeLisa encouraged you to shift your career concentration after your orientation flight. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of
Mhm.
mentors and how they sometimes are able to see potential in us before we see it in ourselves?
Thank you. This is one of the most important questions. I literally just did a keynote called Soaring Together Mentorship in Action. So, this idea of the women who have mentored me along my life, either with a nudge or literally walking a journey with me, this is really top of mind. So, I got the 4-year scholarship from the Air Force ROTC program to go to UC Berkeley. My plan was to be a civil engineer. The degree that I was pursuing and I finished was in architecture. And the Air Force actually, funny enough, gave me a scholarship in architecture. So therefore, I thought in my little ignorant 18-year-old mind that there was architects in the Air Force. Insert laughter here because it's so funny to me. But I did not know that there weren't because they gave me a scholarship. So halfway through when we went to field training, that summer of field training, they paired us with civil engineering and different people so we could do the career shadowing at field training. And that's when a first lieutenant enlightened me and told me there are no architects in the Air Force. You're not going to like civil engineering. I fill potholes in base housing for a living. And I'm like, so I mean, literally, like, thank you, Lieutenant Mentor, because she's like, you're not going to like that. If you think you're designing. So I felt like, oh my God, what am I going to do? She's like, if you can do anything else in the Air Force, go do it because you're not. So I was crushed because I'm like, this is my plan, right? But the very next
There you
day,
go.
right? Because I didn't know. But this was important because a lot of teenagers select majors and they don't know what it is, right? I was romanticizing it. I didn't know any better. That's why it's important to ask questions in high school. The very next day, they flew us out to that pilot training base. When we landed, there was a guy with the clipboard who said, who wants an orientation flight tomorrow? I'm like, this is my first time on an airplane in my life because the Air Force put me on this plane, right? During field training. I was 20 years old and it's my first airplane flight. And now they're going to offer me another one tomorrow? What? I'm like, yeah, sign me up. So I
Yes.
always tell kids say yes to opportunity because I said yes. I'm like, so we're just going to fly around for fun? And like, yeah, orientation flight. I'm like, they're talking as if everybody knows what that is. I did not know what that was. So the next day, I found myself on a team at Williams Air Force Base with Captain Dolly DeLisa, instructor pilot. And they very intentionally matched me up with a woman whose job it was to teach people how to fly. And I had the best time. It's like 45 minutes, hot July over the desert in Arizona. Not
Yeah.
comfortable, but really fun. And, I found myself inverted. She let me fly. We're doing rolls. And I was laughing the whole time. I thought it was hilarious, and when we landed, yeah, that's that mentoring. She says, "You're the only one I flew with today who did not throw up."
Wow.
She said, "Clearly, this is something you can learn to do." And I was like, "Me? Like I'm supposed to be, engineering." And then I remember that woman saying, "If you can do something else, do something else." So she says, "Yeah, go tell the stuff you want to fly." So she told me not only that it's something I can learn to do after 45 minutes of, seeing my aptitude and joy and, she was teaching me, but how to do it. Go back and tell the staff you want to fly. So you bet without that flight, without those few minutes taxiing back of this is something you can do and that she's making that determination based on being an instructor pilot and then telling me how to do it, none of the rest of my life would have happened. I mean, it's amazing to me just how much she had me shift, day before with that lieutenant and then with this pilot. And I actually talked to her a couple years ago to tell her what I've been doing, what I did, and then I actually sent her the books to thank her for making my aviation life possible. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
the
That
most.
was going to be my next question. What would you tell her today? So how was that conversation with her?
She was completely surprised. She was flying for an airline still. And she just says, well, I'm very happy that you decided to take my advice because a lot of people don't take that advice. You mentor somebody, you give them an idea, suggestion for something really cool, but fear keeps them from acting. And she says, you went for it. You took the advice and you did the work. And I did the work. But I said, but you put the idea in my head and you told me that it was possible for someone like me, somebody who had never been on an airplane until literally the day before I met you. And so that's it. That's the message. So say yes to opportunity. And then when someone gives you advice on something that they see the aptitude and the possibility for you, don't talk yourself out of it. Just go. I didn't know for sure if I was going to get selected for a navigator side or a pilot side. I didn't know the Air Force was going to do it. But if you don't enter, you can't win, right? So that's something else she taught me. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that also, I think, speaks volumes to the power of planting seeds in those that are coming up. And you say that fear has a tendency to prevent these seeds from growing, but I think when the talent is there, when the desire and the passion is there, a seed will sprout anywhere. Just like a rose can grow between the cracks of concrete, right?
I
So I
love that
think,
you're saying that. I'm doing this in my garden and I literally have pumpkins growing in the cracks between my retaining walls. So
yeah,
I just had to add that because you're right. Give it the soil, give it the
and they will
nurturing.
find a way.
Yes, it finds a way. Beautiful analogy. Thank you, Karen.
Yes, yes. So, what has your experience been like as a woman navigating the aviation and military industries, which are typically male dominated?
Yeah.
What has shaped your leadership and mentorship style today?
It's literally been everything. I have a picture that I show at school assemblies and keynotes of my graduating class, which is 23 guys and me. And I show that just because that's the reality of military aviation, even today. But I show that not for that reason, but to tell them that count how many people are graduating. There's like 24 people in the picture, but 32 started. That means there are 8 guys who did not graduate because that's the attrition in nav school and pilot training. I mean, that's just, we lose that many. They don't make it. They, academics, sims, flights, there's that kind of a washout rate. So I say, girls, when you're in a place where you're surrounded by guys, and also for the guys, if you're surrounded by all women, like you belong there. You belong there. Be competitive, girls, right? And so that lesson very early on for me was really important because I didn't need there to be 3 or 4 women around for me to be competitive. I already knew I was competitive. That's why the Air Force chose me. So I know that there's this thing called imposter syndrome. I know it exists. I've never had it because the Air Force chose me to go to flight training. So why would I think that I don't belong there, right? So that is so important is don't tell yourself you don't belong when you do. Very important part of my leadership, my confidence in being there and stepping into places where I was going to be forever outnumbered. Once you're there, once you're training, nobody cares. It's all about how you do, right? It's all about the work. It's about the performance. And the same with the 10 years of flying. Sometimes I was the only woman on a crew of 4. Sometimes it was all 4 women. But by the time you're there, everybody's got wings, everybody's qualified. I think what gets trickier is later when you transition into civilian roles and you realize, wow, these women are really timid. These women don't negotiate their salaries. These women are in a pay gap because in the military, there is no pay gap, right? So when I started flying, I was getting paid the same as the guys next to me, and I did that for a decade. So that also informed me as a professional in industry is why would I accept less money than a guy, right? But
Correct.
I'm watching women do it all the time, right? So many impacts from the service and the flying and the navigating the industries and being outnumbered. Now I'm in the air show industry. I'm actually dressed like if you see me at an air show, this is what I look like. My shady to keep the sun out of my eyes, Captain Mama. But now that I'm in the air show industry, we're right back at the being outnumbered again. And when I go to the industry convention in Las Vegas in December and exhibit, I think there's like 6 women in the entire hall of like 10 aisles. Some women who sing, an air show announcer, me, and then 3 or 4 women that are flying as demo pilots in the show. But again, you know, I'm supposed to be there. So to answer your question, The military service and the aviation and being so outnumbered continue to reinforce that confidence that I have to have in myself to step into these unknown places. And it's propelled me through everything I've done since and as an entrepreneur and everything else. So yeah, it was foundational.
Beautiful. And I think you kind of poked at the idea of you're already qualified, and the way that you see what you're bringing to the table is more important than who you are, kind of thing. I think that's something that I myself have realized a couple of years ago, where even with speaking publicly, some people kind of shy away from that because, oh, people are going to judge me. People are going to, think I don't know my stuff. But once you change your perception of, I am simply a messenger in this scenario, I am simply transferring information, delivering information so that others can make a decision. Once I saw myself as a conduit of data, my change. And, we all get nerves when public speaking
Yeah.
about, but I think certainly the way you see the action and not the person, you're seeing the action, I think that changes everything. So,
But let me add to that because you're not
yeah,
just there delivering data, you are there delivering value. That's what you're doing
direct,
when you're representing the organization, when you're talking about opportunities, when you're talking about benefits and membership, you're there delivering value messages, right? And I think a lot of times we forget that, we've been asked to be in this leadership role, we've been asked to do this keynote or whatever because people see value in our work. And so if we always remember, I'm here to deliver value, then why would you think, oh, they're not going to like me, they're going to judge me? No, they chose me to be here to bring valuable information or story or opportunities or whatever, right? If you see the value in your work and you remind yourself of that other stuff that the negative stories in our heads that we think are going to happen. What if I fall off the stage? Right. I mean, there's nerves, like everybody can be nervous, obviously.
yeah,
That's because you're in front of people. But I'll give you a technique that I use. Okay. Before I go on stage, you'll find me either backstage or in a bathroom stall somewhere, and I'm hyping myself up because I'm like, I can't wait to get out there and deliver this valuable stories that I put together for you. Or
I
I
love that.
can't wait to get out there and share, these stories of veterans that I helped transition out with their personal branding or whatever the topic is. But I'm like hyping myself up. So when I get out there, I'm like ready to deliver that value that they're bringing me to deliver. And that's how I get rid of the nerves is like I just pump myself up, reminding myself that I'm here to deliver this value. And I think that that is the mindset shift that you're talking about. That once you remind yourself of that, it changes everything.
Beautiful. And I think circling back to the original question, just the importance of having mentorship. And I don't think mentorship needs to be official or formal or structured all the time. Even just having peer-to-peer bonds that you create over time will let you point out the value that you bring in any scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that you can realize that in yourself.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
Well,
beautiful.
and the thing about mentorship is a lot of times that we assume that people know what that means. And I can tell you, as somebody who has been in front of a lot of high school students in the last 60 days in El Paso and in Grapevine, I did some assemblies after you and I met. I make myself available to the teenagers. In this case, it was all high school students, Navy ROTC, JROTC, Air Force Junior ROTC, and then different other communities of teenagers in El Paso. I make myself available. You guys don't even know how important it is to have someone to talk to, but I'm giving you my information. So when you realize that you need to ask some questions about college applications, scholarships, that you have me, right? 6 students so far have reached out and
Awesome.
for mentor, but they're not saying, "Hi, can you mentor me?" They're saying, "Hi, I've been thinking about your talk and I want to run something by you." And so and a lot of these are not just about college. One of them is like about his weight. Like my weight's holding me back from being a better cadet and leader, even though my grades are awesome. Like you need all kinds of help, but we have to be able to present ourselves as approachable so that these young people, and I think it helps that I've raised 3 young people that are now in college, to do it in an approachable way where it's not scary for them. But I am like, I could talk about mentorship all day because it is the difference between a young person asking for help and finding that way to improve and then going forth and realizing their potential and shriveling up and disappearing because they didn't ask for help and they stay in that scary space. So yeah, I think the challenge that we have as professionals is how do I make myself more visible and approachable to the young people that need the help, whether they know it or not. That's the thing. And that's the challenge I put out there for everybody is are you making yourself visible? Are you making yourself approachable? We need
Yeah.
more of us doing this work. Am I right? We need more of us doing this.
Yeah, we do. We sure do. And you also touch on, for example, in this young gentleman's case, his weight. But that also highlights, I think, that being a professional involves all aspects of your life because you're constantly balancing, right? And when one thing is not in balance, it affects all these things. Having that guidance from a younger age on, okay, this is a roadblock, and how do I take care of this roadblock so I can get to my goal over here? I
Yeah,
mean, how invaluable is that, that you
right.
have someone with plenty of experience who can show you the ropes, who can give you their advice, who can give you some guidance? I know a lot of us growing up did not have that.
Exactly. And that is why, because we didn't have it, we understand how powerful it is to have it.
Yes. 100%. So, Graciela, you and your team received the prestigious Air Medal for Combat Flight Operations. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, yeah.
While also navigating barriers created by the combat exclusion law. What
Yeah.
challenges did that create, and how did that continue to motivate you to push forward despite those limitations?
Oh, that was a crazy time. So, if you remember back to those days, or for people who don't know, late 1990, Congress passed the law to repeal the Combat Exclusion Act, which was in place since 1948, keeping women from flying, well, first from serving, and then later from actually flying, and then in combat roles. So in April, or no, it was December 1990, the law passed and it became a law. But then what happened was Congress passed it and it got signed, but then the administration that was in place at the time didn't want to implement it. They did not want to let women fly combat aircraft. So they stalled for 2.5 years doing
Oh,
presidential
wow.
commissions and fact finding missions. And that is the time when I graduated, third in my class, requested a combat aircraft only to be denied because the DoD had not yet implemented the new law. Okay.
Wow.
So that was happening. And then I finished training, went to the tanker, did survival training, got to my new unit, and then deployed over to Saudi Arabia for Operation Southern Watch. We were one of the first three crews in theater, and we were flying one, two, three times a day. So very quickly, we reached the 25, 30 flight threshold to be nominated for the Air Medal. And there was four crews at the time. The other three crews were all male. So of the four crews, I was the only air crew there woman that was a woman. So the other three crews got their air medals shipped to Saudi Arabia and they got the ceremony and got to pin them on. Our crew, believe it or not, and this is in God, yeah, it was like August 1992. Okay, so it was like almost 2 years after the law was signed and they still hadn't
Wow.
implemented. So we got a letter. My aircraft commander got a letter that said, Captain Neil Wayment, your crew cannot receive the air medal because there's a woman on your crew. Like, what? We've already been flying here for 2 months. We've
Yeah.
already done the missions and now we can't be recognized because I'm here? What? So, first of all, like, what does that do to the guys on my crew? Right? So, navigating that challenge, the first thing for me was like thinking, what are they thinking? And thank goodness these are like the quintessential male allies. They were laughing. They're like, "Oh, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. You know, the colonel's going to appeal it." Like, I know, but I guess we get to keep flying. So even though we just got told that we can't get recognized for the work that we've been doing and the missions that we've been doing, like the other crews, we have to keep flying. So
Yeah.
that need to compartmentalize the negative stuff happening around you so you can keep on flying, that I was solidified during that. And this is my first deployment, Karen. This is the very first deployment with the Air Force. Eventually, the colonel appealed it. Eventually, the DoD finally implemented the change and assigned. It was April 1993. It's that famous press conference with General McPeak and three women who were the first to get assigned the fighters. You know, the fighter that I got denied, but now they can't deny it anymore. So three women got their fighters, and that was April of '93. So it literally took 2.5 years, almost 3 years, for the law to be implemented. And so my challenge was, okay, this is just my time where I'm falling in the cracks here. But I was always looking ahead at the women who were now graduating at the top of their classes who would never be denied. So that was that crazy story. But eventually, yeah, we did get the air medal. And then I found out 3 years ago that I'm actually the first Latina aviator in the US Air Force to ever get the air medal because I
Isn't
wasn't even supposed to be there. So isn't that funny?
how does an honor like that feel? One, to be recognized for that achievement, and now being the only Latina,
Well, the
that's quite the
first Latina.
accomplishment.
There's
Yeah,
been others that have received the air medal,
the first
but
Latina.
I was the first Latina aviator in the Air Force to receive it. And again, I just told you the conditions under which it happened. So, like, I was just kind of like over there, and what they were doing in the Gulf War right before I went over there, because this is like the very tail end of Desert Storm. What they were doing to the women who were going over there before, they were leaving them there for 10 days, even 2 weeks, and then they'd send them home because they didn't want them flying enough missions to qualify for air medals. See?
Wow, so that was very intentional.
Right? So the women that were flying a year or 2 ahead of me and, tankers, they were in tankers and they were in airlift because they were not in combat jets. They tell me that, yeah, we got over there for 10 days, 2 weeks, and then they would send us back home. Okay.
Wow.
So one of them told me, "So you're lucky that by the time you got there, they forgot about you." They just sent me over there and then they forgot to take me home because, we were flying so much, they needed me there. And so that's the way they tell me. They say, "When we were there, we got sent back, so we couldn't get our medals unless we went over there 3 or 4 times. But they sent you over there and then they forgot about you. So that's why you got the air medal." So I think it feels bizarre, the story that I tell you, because it wasn't like I was like the other crew members that we all got our medals while we were there in theater. It didn't happen that way for us. It was like, a couple years later, here's your air medal. So it was kind of
Yeah.
anticlimactic because literally they shipped the air medals to our squadron and we just had a ceremony back in Washington State. So it was, I don't know, it was kind of awkward. But in time, I've come to appreciate that it's a whole continuum that women experience, right? From flying everything in World War II to now suddenly we're going to pretend women don't fly anything. 28 years later, we're going to let you fly something, and then we're going to keep you out of combat for 20 years and finally open that door. So it's just a long continuum of the history of women in military aviation that we've lived through. And my little slice was just that awkwardness of laws
Yeah.
change but not implemented. So I've come to appreciate it that way. Yeah. And
Yeah, and
now
I also like to
now women
think.
fly everything,
Yeah,
and it makes
and
me
I
so
also like to
happy.
think that the things that happen to us serve a great purpose in what motivates us, and I can see that as something that really fuels you, no pun intended, because you
Yeah,
were under the
I
the
like
fuel
that.
tanker, but
I like that.
really fuels you and gives you that passion to continue reaching out to the next generation of aviation professionals, and
Yeah.
how much value you add, and how much importance you are putting forth to the future of the country, basically.
Well, and thank you for saying it that way because what I think is so amazing, and I made a Thunderbird pilot cry, one of the women that flies the Thunderbirds. Okay, we're at a performer party 2 years ago, and I told her this story about, being third in my class and stepping up to the mic and asking for an F-15 Strike Eagle and being denied because the law had not been implemented. I was advised to ask for it anyway because, hey, you might get it, but the colonel denied it because it hadn't been implemented. So I told her this story, and so she's somebody who flew F-15 Strike Eagles. Right? That's the plane I wanted. That was my number one choice. But she flew it because it was just those years later when there was no more restrictions and she was able to get that assignment. She flew that and then had like over 1,500, almost 2,000 combat hours, and then switched over the F-16. And now she's flying for the Thunderbirds. So I'm telling her this story, and like she had like F-15 Strike Eagle earrings on. So she had like these little F-15s. And I tell her the story and she starts crying, like just tears are coming out. And she says, "I know this is the history of what women have experienced. I just never had met anybody that it happened to." And so she was feeling like what that would feel like to do all the work in training and then be denied the aircraft on tracking night because of this, right? And then I grabbed her hands and I said, "So do you understand what it means to me to see you fly?" And then we both
I just got
cried.
goosebumps.
Right, and then we both cried because that's the next generation, and so now we're one more generation with the young ones now, and yeah, you're right, it fuels me because I love to tell the stories, but to say, so you guys understand, gals, there are no restrictions. You can be a 5-year-old dreaming of being a fighter pilot, just like boys have always been. And this is actually a thing you can do. Like there are no more obstacles in place, institutional and legal obstacles in place. So now it's just a matter of deciding if you want to do it, if you want to pursue it. And just letting him know that, people say the sky is the limit. I said, no, the sky is not the limit. The sky is where we work and play. The
I
limit,
love that.
it's not the limit. So yeah, it is about that. And I'll tell you what, Karen, when I see kids dressing up in my flight suits at air shows, which is what I do as Captain Mama, we give away sponsored books and then they dress up. And when they see themselves, it just happened on Saturday. I was at a school for Dia del Niño festival, and a little girl and her younger brother both put on my flight suits. And the parents got the pictures and stuff. And when the girl was taking the flight suit off, she goes, okay, that's it. I want to be a pilot. She's like, like that's it. Cause like she saw the picture of how cool that looks. And that is what I mean by we need more of us doing this work because I can only be so many places. But she's like, no, that's it. I want to fly. I mean, like she saw herself, like literally, I helped them see
Yeah.
themselves dressed like the characters in the children's books, but then they see themselves really wearing my uniform. It's got my name. It's real wings. It's a real uniform. And she was adorable. That's it. I'm gonna go fly you pilot. And I was like, it's about that. It's about, showing what's possible, but then meeting somebody who did it. And then now she knows that I'm right here. She's like 12. I said, so you're gonna come to our next Girls in Aviation Day. And, I met a guy who wants to start one of those in her city now. And so she now knows about the Young Eagles program, so she can go get herself an orientation flight. So that's where it starts. Those are the seeds we're talking about. Because before that day, I asked her mom, had she ever said this before? She was, no, like it's never entered her mind. It's okay. And then, she has the books now to read my story and to read about this. So all of that is the work. All of that is, it's my why.
And I think that's where our true power lies. We're serving as those mirrors
Yeah.
to the next generations.
Yeah.
Hey, we look like you. We come
Yeah.
from where you come from. We've had
Exactly.
the same struggles
Yep.
that
Yep.
you have.
Yeah. And we've done it.
Why not you?
And we've done it. In my email signature block, I have a picture that was taken by a friend named Denise. And it was at Girls in Aviation Day 2 years ago. And it was just one of these moments that happened. So we were at an airport. There was 3 active duty Air Force aviators there with us in their flight suits. So one was an RC-135 navigator, one was a drone pilot, and one was a C-17 pilot. So 3 women in flight suits currently serving. And 2 girls, 2 sisters, little Latinas, happened to be wearing my flight suits and getting pictures when they called everybody to go outside for the group picture, like the big Girls in Aviation Day picture. So we all went outside for the big picture, and they're in my flight suits. And then my friend Denise, the photographer, she saw the girls in the flight suits, and I was talking to a couple of the active duty women. She goes, "Wait, everybody, come over here!" So she composed the picture. So it's in my signature block. It's the 3 active duty pilots. In front of them are the 2 little girls wearing my flight suits, and in front of them is me. And what I told him is, I did it. They're doing it, and you can do it next. And so that felt really, that's the full circle because I already did it. Like I'm not doing it anymore. I did it. I trained them. Now they're doing it. And so the girls are meeting me and they're meeting the women doing it now. And then they're dressed like them. And it's such a beautiful picture because it's about that. It's about the full continuum and more of us showing up to not only say, I look like you, but I did it and I'm going to show you how to start. And that's the key. Here's how you start.
That's beautiful, Graciela. Now, you mentioned in your Latinas in Aviation story that
Mhm.
speaking Spanish at home was strictly enforced. So, what would you say to those who currently struggle with their Latinidad, with their Hispanic identity, because they were never taught Spanish or
Yeah.
sometimes perhaps feel caught between the cultures and maybe not Hispanic enough or not American enough?
I'm going to say you got to learn the word ambicultural. Most people don't know this word ambicultural. They think it's bicultural, like, bifurcation, half bisecting. Oh, no, 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 no. We're not bisecting ourselves. Ambicultural is a word that I learned from Nielsen report written by a Latina several years ago. And what is ambicultural? If you know Spanish, you know the word ambos, both, right? Cultural means that I am both cultures fully. I'm not half and half at a coffee additive. I'm not half and half. We are
Yeah.
100% Dominican, Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever our lineage is. And we're 100% American. This is where we are. This is where we work. Maybe we were born here. Most of us were, right? So ambicultural is how you wrap your mind around the fact that you are fully both cultures and there is no dividing yourself. There just isn't. And anybody that's trying to make you feel like you're not enough of one or the other, well, I always say what other people think about you is none of your business.
Yeah.
But we're ambicultural. We just are. We navigate the cultures, and we do it in one language or we do it in two, and some of us do it in three, you know.
Yeah.
But language is a skill. Everybody does not have it. And there's reasons that parents didn't teach the language to their kids. I understand that. But I always say to people, but hey, Duolingo exists and it's never too late to learn another language, right? So I think that's how you navigate it is you just stop listening to the people that try to make you choose and just say, I'm ambicultural. I'm both.
Thank you for that. I don't think I've ever heard that worded so beautifully. I think we do come up with the mentality of having to choose. I've never heard it said,
Yeah.
you don't have to. You're
I
both.
I've never chosen. I remember people in the Air Force. There was a guy who was like very obviously Latino. He was a sergeant in one of the units that we worked with, and I think his last name was like very overtly in Espanol, like Gonzalez or something. And I remember I started talking to him one day, and he goes, "Oh no, I don't speak Spanish." And he was like just like why would I even say that? I'm like because you're Latino. Oh no, I'm like you are Latino, like you just are. It's a fact. I'm like I'm not expressing my opinion. But, it's like trying not to look Latino because like he's been
Mhm.
forced to think that he has to assimilate. I'm like, dude, assimilate does not mean deny who you are, right? It just doesn't. So I push back on the word assimilate. You know how people like to talk about a melting pot? This is going to be very visual. Okay, I'm going to give you another gardening thing, okay? So, melting pot. Have you made roux in a pot? Okay, so what is roux? Flour, water, butter, you put it in there and then you can't see the flour, can't see the
Yeah.
butter, you can't see it's all mush.
The individual elements. Yeah.
I'm not melting for anybody. Okay. I don't do melting pot. I don't. What
Wow.
I do is we are in this country, and this is another one of my visuals I do in keynotes. Why would you want to melt and be goo and be indistinguishable from everybody else? Why would you want that? I don't want that. We are instead a beautiful garden salad. So here's my horseradish leaves that I put in my salad, my gooseberries, bright yellow little berries, and then I've got my red beets over there. I've got my spinach over there, my orange carrots over there, and my eggplants over there, and my tomatoes. So look at all the color of this colorful salad that I put together and it's beautiful and delicious and healthy. But I can pick out the tomatoes and I can see the Cape gooseberries and the spinach, but it makes a beautiful salad. So I like to say that we are a beautiful American garden salad. We're not a bunch of goo in a pot. So I don't do melting pot. I do the colorful salad because I want to be able to see all the colors and
Yeah.
we're all in. And
And enjoy all the individualistic
thank
features that
you.
make us us.
So no assimilation salad.
I love that as a beginner gardener and Anna as a expert in gardener, we appreciate that.
Yeah, and the visual, like when you put goo in roux, I call it goo, roux in the bottom of a pot that's all melted, and when you put it next to a colorful salad, like really, which one would you rather be, right?
Mhm.
And it's no question. So,
Beautiful. I love that. So, as the daughter of Mexican immigrants, what do you think sparked that early desire to break out of the cultural norms that were imposed on you as they happen for a lot of us, and go ahead and pursue an education and eventually a career in aviation? What do you think what do you
mm,
think you had that maybe others may not have yet been aware of? Like your Mexican American classmates that maybe prefer to flirt with the boys or smoke behind the school.
all
You
of
think
it.
set you apart there?
How did you know they did that? Did you know that's what they were doing? Oh my God. Okay. So I will tell you that I remember exactly when it was, okay? I was 15 years old, and I had gone to the homes of a couple of my friends that were on the basketball, volleyball team, band, cheerleading, whatever I was doing. I'd been to their homes, and all of them had bigger houses. They went to Hawaii or Austria or Paris for the summer or for spring break. We'd always go in the car to El Paso. I started noticing at age 15 that the girls that I knew who traveled, because I wanted to travel, but I never had been on a plane, and my family only traveled in the car to Mexico and El Paso for Christmas, right? I figured out real quick that what they had that I didn't have was college educated parents. So at the age of 15, I said, okay, if I want to live a life like that, not the house and the car, I'm not into the material stuff, but if I want to travel, if I want to be able to say, yes, we took the kids to Japan for the spring break, then I need to be a college educated woman, and have a college educated partner. So at 15, I figured out that that's the difference. That's my answer. Like I started noticing that I don't want to stay right here and keep living this way of rules from the old country of Mexico, which is what my parents were imposing. Because every time I talked about college, my mom would say, "Oh, sure, puedes ir a la universidad, pero vas a vivir aquí. You can go, but you're going to live
Mm,
here." I'm like, "No, I'm not," because there was that whole perception and fear of like the unmarried girl moving away, right? So very early on, they started calling me rebelde. So the answer to your question is, what did I have that others didn't? I had this vision and I didn't know what degree, I didn't know what school, I didn't know any of that. My signpost, and this is what I tell teenagers, my signpost was I want to live my adult life as a college educated woman with money to travel. That's all I knew at 15.
yeah.
Now I got to figure out how that happens. And I know that there's education involved. Again, I've noticed that my parents both have college degrees and they're accountants and engineers and transportation engineers and helicopter pilots and Hmm, right. So
Awesome.
so I didn't have any idea about careers or any of that stuff. I did not have those professional mentors in my neighborhood at all. The only educated person on my street was a piano teacher next door. That was it. So, but that's the answer to your question is I had I was looking around and I was noticing that here's how I say it now. To have what you've never had, you must be willing to go where you've never been. And so with that, then I started asking my counselor, how do I go to college? And then her husband happened to be an Air Force major, and he's the one from Appalachia with like a huge family, really poor. She said, "Come to my house for dinner. Angel will tell you what he did to get out of his situation." And so my high school counselor's husband was my Air Force ROTC 4-year college scholarship mentor while she helped me apply for college. So back to the mentorship, right? So what did I have? I had an inquisitive mind. I was asking lots of questions. I was looking around and figuring out how is there another way to live. And from that came the rest, the college, the scholarship, and everything else. But I'm answering it in this long way because I think it's absolutely important to assign teenagers the initiative to ask, how can I go to college? I even say this to 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
Kids like, talking about college, but I'm only 8. You're talking about scholarships for college. I'm only 8. I said, how lucky are you? You're learning 10 years before you need to know. Imagine if you never learned. And he's like, oh, yeah. So it's all of that. But that's what I had. I was asking questions of how can I go because I had no idea.
Yeah.
Does that answer your
Amazing.
question?
It does. Yes. Yes,
It's a
it
lot.
does.
But I bring it back to it's like, what do you get if you never ask the question? Nothing. So be asking the question.
So, Graciela, you mentioned that the first time you ever saw your father cry was when
Mhm,
they dropped you off at your college dorm. And as I read that in your story, I think that was a huge step for any Hispanic family at the time.
mhm.
And I say that because my mother always tells me the story of her getting accepted to a college upstate away from home and her stepdad basically ripping up the papers and telling her that she wasn't going anywhere, um, much to her dismay, right? So, what do you think sparks that shift in mindset for parents who may initially fear letting their children pursue opportunities beyond what they experience? What would you have told my mom's machista stepdad?
This is like such a loaded question. I will tell you
Hmm.
that I was at a school in November. No, March. I was in school in March, and the staff told me this just happened to one of their students last year. She was accepted to University of Minnesota. She was a Latina, and her parents didn't let her go. Full ride scholarship. So the shift isn't happening all over. We have to make the shift happen. So what I would have told her father, and the reason my parents took me is because I had a conversation with them that went like this. I'm 18 years old and I can just go. I don't need your permission. Okay. And this is what so many Latinas are not willing to do, is to tell parents how it's going to go, because we're so used to the patriarchal messaging and the con respeto and all that stuff, which is great until they use it to smother you. Okay. So what I would have told her dad would be, to look 20, 30 years into the future. How is your life different if you let your daughter go become a college educated woman? How is her life different if you let her become a college educated woman? Because what I mean by that is this. So my dad and mom drove me over there because if they didn't drive me, I was going to buy a ticket and go because I just told them, like, I'm 18. I can just go. I can get on the train. So what I would have told your mom's dad is look ahead and then what kind of a relationship do you want to have with your daughter? Because the resentment that you're going to have if you keep her from leaving home, if the resentment that you're going to have, that's going to be hard to deal with, right? And I have that conversation with parents now. I'm telling you this because I have this conversation with the dad who doesn't want to let her go to God. I'm telling you, like I literally do this at air shows and schools and parent engagement things all the time because this is a cultural thing that isn't changing. And it's not just dads. I know moms that don't teach their girls how to cook so that they'll never leave home. I've got 1,000 stories because of the work that I'm doing. So the mind shift only happens when the young woman tells the parents, this is how it's going to be because you get one life and I am not going to live some script that you have for me. I need to go live my life and see who I can become. And that's the true meaning of empowerment is to give the girls the tools to have these conversations with the parents. And I
Yeah.
even role model the conversation. Let's pretend like I'm your mom. Go ahead, practice. And sometimes they cry, just even try to assert themselves because they've been so trained not to assert. If they can't assert with their parents, good luck asserting with a boy that's trying to take advantage of you, right? So it is literally like we have to be able to assert. We have to train girls to be able to assert for all these reasons. That's the only way it changes. The only way. They called me
Wow.
a rebelde and they had no idea how right they were because I am. I rebelled against all those costumbres and que va a decir la gente. Karen, my favorite story I tell people is, I had all that resistance with my parents. Okay. But I also, like I said, this is how it's going to go. And I went. They were not going to stop me. No way. But so the conflict has to happen. I always tell the kids it has to happen. It's not going to happen because you're literally fighting the cultural norms that your family has set for you and the church ladies. So when I got the scholarship and I got accepted to Berkeley, I remember like it was yesterday. We're at church the following Sunday. And my mom was telling the vecinas that I got into college and y recibió una beca, so se va a ir. And she wasn't saying it like celebrating. My mom was complaining at church that I got into college and I got the money and that I'm going, right? It was a complaint. I remember these church ladies coming up to me and they're going, uh, like all the judgment, right? And I'm like, yeah, I got the money and I'm going. But that's the pressure that is still applied to your mom, to women like you and me still today. And I know that more Latinas are getting the message and going because for every one Latino boy that graduates, young man from college, two Latinas are graduating from college. Did you know that? Right?
I
So
didn't.
we're at two
That's
to one
amazing.
national education statistics. So we're keeping the boys home and making them work. Latinas are getting a message and going, peace out, and they're leaving.
Mhm.
But still, there's so many that are being denied. So we could be at 3 to 1, but they're still doing it, what they did to your mom. So that's my answer is it will only change, the mindset will change for the parents when we insist that we go because we don't need their permission. You're 18, you have the scholarship, you got into college, you go and you get the job and you figure it out. Because the story I was going to tell you, I came back home 6 months later, after I left, I came home for Christmas, brought my uniform home. My mom took a picture of me, my cute little cadet uniform out in the snow in Colorado. And then the very next thing my mom said is, vamos a visitar a las vecinas.
She wanted to show you off now.
Right? So 6 months ago, we are in conflict, but they dropped me off. They came back home. She endured my lack of being there. But A few months later, when I come home for Christmas and I'm now dressed as an Air Force cadet and she's getting that picture, the very next thing is, vamos a visitar las vecinas. Yeah, show me off. And I show those pictures and I tell the kids the conflict has to happen, but then your parents are going to understand that you're doing it for the right reasons and they will be proud of you. But you have to go through this. You can't say, oh, I don't want to irritate my parents and stay home. You have to go through it. It's part of the journey. It's part of what we have to tell them. It's not easy, but you got to go through it.
Yeah,
Bring
and I
your
think it's
parents
also
with you.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also a shift in perspective because you were called the rebel, la rebelde, but you were just trying to take control of your life, of your career, of what your future looked like because you knew you had a say. So I think that's the
Yes.
shift in knowing that you have a say. You are the author of your own story, and you do
Thank
have
you.
a say in what that story says.
But it is also, if you've read The Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a book I recommend to everybody, he talks very much in that book about how most people will never do this because it is easier to go with the flow, to be than to be the salmon going upstream. People want to go with the flow and they want to be in agreement with the group. And the rebelde and doing this hard stuff is what very few people even want to do. And so when you understand that it is human nature to just roll over and for your mom to disagree with Poppy, like it's so annoying that I got into college and it's not letting me go. She just goes with it. That's what most people do because she perceives it as easier for herself. She's not thinking about the long term. And that's why I do this session with parents in Spanish called La Vista de Largo Plazo, where we talk
Mhm.
about all of this right now. We talk about this in family engagement seminars. I do it totalmente en español so we can talk about all this right here that we're talking about because we need to get it out, talk about it, and look at the consequences of not changing your mindset if you're the parents and not changing your mindset if you're the kid, if you're just going to do what's easier for your parents. So it's a shift for everybody, but this is actual work we need to do to put forth those examples of what life looks like on the other side when you are a college educated aviation professional.
Very
And how
good.
beautiful.
Very good.
Yeah.
That is very beautiful. Now, in the book, you say advocate a gospel of rebellion against low expectations, gender stereotypes, and naysayers of higher education. What sacrifices or risks can come with embracing this kind of mindset?
Correct. If you're doing this like I did when you were in high school and you're a three-sport athlete and you're doing the things to prepare yourself to be a college girl, instant conflict when your mom says things like "Las niñas están en la casa ayudando con la comida y la ropa," and so you get painted by your parents as you're not conforming, right? And they're trying to guilt you into compliance. So the very first, did you say the word consequence? Because that's one of the consequences. Is that the word you
Oh,
just used when you asked me?
I don't think I did. No.
I think like what are the consequences? Okay, well I'll paint it the consequence or challenges or risks, right? So the first
What are
thing
the
is that
sacrifices and risks? Yeah.
sacrifices, that's the word. Yeah. So the first thing is that you're getting labeled as not complying. But like your parents and the church ladies are like going out of their way to make sure that you know that you're not complying with the program. And if you don't like conflict, like I love conflict, like bring it. Let's do it. Let's do the conflict, right? But if you don't, and most people are not, right? They're not. And so if you don't like conflict, then you need to shy away. It's like you retract to protect yourself from conflict. So that is a very real challenge and sacrifice to experience to get to be the author of your own story
Mm.
and advocating. What I mean by the rebelling against the cultural low expectations is exactly what we're talking about. 25% of Latino Americans in the USA have college degrees. There's no other demographic in the country that's worse. It's us. 25%, only 25%. Just a few years ago, it was only 19%. So we're making little strides. But our communities grow really fast, but we're not breaking this 25%. So that's what I mean by the culture of low expectations, because we keep wanting to have the kids close and we keep wanting them to go to work. And we're not thinking like my Asian friends and my Asian husband, which is the expectation that you're going to apply to Harvard, Stanford, Yale, that you're going to apply to Ivy League schools. It's like the mindset's so different of like, going for it. We're like,
Mhm.
so all of that. So those are the sacrifices is how icky it's going to feel for teenagers and young women and young men to have to tell your parents how you're going to do it. But it's a fork in the road. You either comply with what your parents are telling you because you don't want the conflict, or you decide that you're going to live a very different, extraordinary life and
Oh,
do it your way. And you're going to bring them with you. No estamos abandonando. We're not abandoning the family. My parents tell you, nunca nos abandonó. Instead, I took them all over the world. I took my parents to Germany, Austria, Hawaii, Italy, Mass at the Vatican. Okay, they got an extraordinary life because they didn't prevent me from that vision I had for myself to be a college educated woman with money to travel because they were part of the travel, right? Of course I'm going to bring my family along. These are all the things that we need to help families see, those parenting the next generation, the kids and the parents, because nothing sucks more than getting that kid excited about college and then having them do what they did to your mom. I
very
bring the
true.
whole family along. Yeah. And that's the approach we need to take because we're making cultural shifts. We're like shifting cultural
Yeah.
mindsets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. How do you translate that gospel of rebellion into leadership without
Mhm.
alienating those who may not yet recognize what those barriers are and what we're fighting against?
Talking about the examples that have gone before you, reading Latinas and Aviation stories. Jackie Camacho Ruiz is the author of that series. I think you saw the fifth volume at Y. It got launched at the conference. So reading the Captain Mama books and reading my bio in the back, um, reading the 22 stories in each of the Latinas in Aviation and having that conversation. Leadership is about influence. Here, mommy and papi, I'm going to show you the first book I ever published. The first one I ever published is not even a Captain Mama. It's this one, Innovating Green American Jobs and the Latinos Creating Them. This is the first book with me as an author. This is 10 case studies of Latinas and Latino entrepreneurs. There's a picture in each one. There's recommendations for young people in each one. And when I first debuted this book in Alexandria, Virginia, that I was on the East Coast for the East Coast launch, it was a seventh grade classroom, a science teacher, and he called me the next day and he says, one of our seventh grade girls went home with her book, sat her mom down and say, Mommy, this is why I want to go to college. I want to be like Rosa Maria. I want to be like Sandra. I want to be like Carmen. Okay. And so leadership stories, we have written them. If I had an hour, I'd start rattling off the books. Building the Latino Future by Frank Carvajal, 52 Latino leadership stories. So we take the literature and the examples from our community, books that have already been written, we get them in the hands of the kids so they can show them to their parents and they can have a conversation. These are the people whose parents were afraid to let them go to college, but they went. And look at the companies that she owns now, or look at the airplane that she's flying now. Latinas in Aviation stories. There's a girl from El Salvador who's flying 787 Dreamliners for Kuwait Airways now. Her name is Susanna. Okay, that's what we do is we take this case studies de los rebeldes and we say, and this is what happens when you get to live that kind of life. And you read those stories that have been published about those of us who've done it. That's my best answer. And then you lead by showing other girls, other boys, other parents that this is the way, this is the pathway. Because we tell you in our stories where we went to school, we tell you the scholarship that we got. We're literally telling you the pathways so that you can just follow us. Like, I want to go be a maintenance officer. Now you read the chapter in Latinos in Aviation, the maintenance officers, and you know how to become an ATP. Or you know what I'm saying? Read Sandy Granados' story in the first volume. She'll tell you.
Hmm.
So that's my answer is we can practice the advocacy by putting los ejemplos in front of the parents who are resisting and the kids. One more thing. I just heard that podcast that you guys did with your past leadership. One of the women was
Yes.
talking about the summer aviation camp that was started and funded, and how the
And
biggest
the trouble
challenge
they
she
were
had
having.
was the Latino parents who wouldn't let their kids go for a week. Okay, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I
Yeah.
told you we're having with the Tech Truck Summer Academy. So these are things that don't change. And I think what's been missing is instead of just somebody showing up and saying, hi, can we have your kid for a week? Is here's a Latinas in Aviation book. Here's these
Yeah.
case studies of other women and who have done it. And this is the career examples that we're exposing your kids to this summer. And that's a
Yes.
different conversation than having a parent think their kid's going to go away. It's like, look at the ejemplos of women who have already done it. And of course, men too. I hope I've answered your question because that was a big question you just
Yes.
asked me.
No, no, and I think you're pointing at that changing the conversation slightly softens the stance and doesn't get parents as defensive as, "Here, take my children." Yeah,
Yeah. It's you're sharing success stories. You're sharing the stories of people like us. The parents can see that, these are Latinas and Latinos first generation to go do these wildly different things. And somebody has to go first in your family. Like I was first in my family. Somebody has to go first. And so we have to be empowering them to have the courage to go first and tell them this is not going to be easy for you. I always like to
but it's
tell Latinos, half of the Latinos that go to college drop out. And they're like, what? 52% drop out. Like that's the reality because of all the pressure, right? The pressure from the family, the lack of support, the money, whatever. So the mentoring we're talking about, it's not just to go to college. It's like to go all the way through and finish. And then where are they going to work, right? That's where organizations like yours are so important. Like these are the kind of jobs that exist if you study aviation management, airport operations, right? Show. So it's not enough to get them into college. We have to mentor all the way through because they are the first to go.
correct, 100%. So similar question, but not on the mentoring side anymore as much as it is on the industry side. What does rebellion look like once you're in positions of influence and responsibility on the industry side?
Great question. Okay. It is seeing processes that are in place. And we've all known the person who says we've always done it this way, don't we? This is the way we've always done it. Okay. Well, is that the reason that it should continue to be done this way? It's rebellion is simple inquiry. It is why is it done that way? Is that still the best way to do it in 2026? Is that the best way to do it now that this technology exists? Right? I think we see that every time there's a bizarre aircraft accident that happens, like the horror over the Potomac in January. Every time something happens, that's when opportunity to question everything again. Rebellious attitude is simply questioning things and not waiting for airplanes to collide before you do so. Just questioning processes. And, sometimes the process has to stay the same. The technique has to stay the same, but sometimes it needs to change. And so I think that it's inquiry. So it sounds so powerful. It's rebellion, right? But it is about rebelling against just keeping everything status quo. That's what it is. And that sounds like the opposite of something you hear from somebody who served in the military. But I assure you, I was this way when I was an officer, much to the chagrin of my officers, my commanding officers. But I was like, no, but why do we have to do it like that? Like, no, I was always questioning it. And a lot of times I would get, told because of these reasons, oh, okay, it makes sense. But now I learned why we keep doing it this way. Versus other times it's like, no, do I have permission to create an entirely different program, take a new direction? Yes. Okay. Now I got to go do the work because I thought of another way. Happy to do it. But it's that, especially in the federal workforce, a lot of times people just want to show up every day and just do things the same. I think what's important is to give ourselves permission to question because then we can actually improve. And we say we want innovation. People are always saying they want innovation. But when an innovator shows up,
They're
do they
afraid of
really want
change.
innovation? Right, right. So, and that's human nature. That's just human nature everywhere. Can recognize human nature, but then be bold enough to ask the questions. Yeah, because you might just improve something.
Very good. I love that. Now, before we close, what advice would you give to students or young professionals, especially young Latinas, who are considering careers in aviation, aerospace, or military service?
Number one, surround yourself with women who are doing it right now and who've already done it. And how do you do that? So, number one, Young Eagles flights, EAA Young Eagles, search your zip code, find a flight between the ages of 8 and 17, get up in the air, take that free flight, and start networking with people in your town who are flying right now, who are tuned into where the ground schools are, where the scholarships are, the summer academies. Nothing beats that immediate jumping in, getting that first flight, and then surrounding yourself with people in your community doing it now. That's number one. Number two is to learn about organizations like Women Rock Wings and Women with Wings. I know you interviewed the founder of that recently. She's got that virtual academy happening right now. Okay, there's always virtual experiences. This is so important. Find the closest Women in Aviation International chapter in your community. We are everywhere. Just literally, parents, kids, call us up. Hi, I'm a middle school student. I'm a high school student. We love having student members join us for breakfast at the airport on a Saturday, right? Just meeting them. And again, for the same reasons as the Young Eagles. Start meeting the women who are your mentors right now. Take the initiative. Take the initiative. No one's going to come up to you in the hallway at school and say, hi, would you like some information, scholarship information? Some scholarships. No one's going to do that. You have to be asking. So it comes back around. My advice is ask the question, who do you know? How can I go fly? How can I learn to fly? How can I go to college? That's what I would do, is just start asking, how can I? And then attract the people to you that are going to tell you how.
Beautiful. Graciela, thank you so much for sharing your story, your leadership, and your wisdom with the NHCFAE Familia today. Your journey truly is an inspiration to so many future aviation professionals and leaders. So we truly appreciate your time and the impact that you continue making across the aviation and STEM community.
Well, thank you, Karen. It was such a joy to meet you in Texas, and it's a joy to continue the conversation. And just sign me up as a resource for all of you guys. And I know we're all doing that community work that's so important. So let's just get more of us to do it.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the NHCFAE podcast. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and across all social media platforms to stay connected with future episodes, scholarship opportunities, mentorship programs, and aviation leadership conversations like this one. Please visit us at www.nhcfae.org. And until next time, thank you for being part of the NHCFAE Familia. Until next time.